Hello and welcome to Video Game Hangover. I'm Randy Dickinson and I'm in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania.
Hey, I'm DJ Ross. I am in Mountain View, California.
Each week on Video Game Hangover, we talk about the games that have been keeping us up at night. It is Halloween week, so we're playing some spooky games like Callisto Protocol, Mundaun, and Sunshine Manor.
Wait, Halloween's next week. It's pre-Halloween week.
Oh, yeah. Well, if we waited for next week's episode, though, we'd be too late.
Yes, and doing a Halloween show after Halloween is illegal, so...
Right, yeah.
It's Halloween week
knows,
observed.
From November 1st forward, DJ and I just play Christmas games all the time.
Yes, exactly. It's all elf bowling all the
time. So we had to get this Halloween thing out of the way while we had the chance.
Yeah. So you got me in a panic. I was just like, oh my god, Halloween. Yeah. Get all my Halloween stuff in order.
The clock is ticking, man. If your Halloween stuff is not in order, you're pretty much out of time.
Yeah, well, I actually don't have that much stuff to get in order. I will, put a pumpkin outside. Don't even carve it at this point, but just for the, just the little Halloween touch.
The aesthetic.
Yeah, gotta have a pumpkin.
Yeah, definitely. We bought ours at Costco this year.
Oh, you got a giant pumpkin?
We went down to the giant pumpkin patch at Costco.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they have these giant bins in the middle of the aisle for giant, really big pumpkins for $6.99.
Yeah. How big are we talking here? Like two people need to carry that thing?
No, nothing. It's not going to be on Halloween Wars on the Cartoon Network with people carving it with a chainsaw or anything like that. But it was hefty. It's a chubby boy. It's thick.
All right. Still a one-person pumpkin, though.
Thick with 2 C's.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah. It's good. I'll post a picture on my social media.
All right. On your TikTok or whatever.
On my Yo Gabba Gabba or whatever the kids are using these days.
Exactly. Oh man. Well, now I feel like I actually got a 2-person pumpkin this year. I don't know if my neighbor would appreciate it. Might make it hard for them to get out the front door.
Do you have a costumed event this year? Any costume parties? Anything?
No.
Are you going trick-or-treating with your friends?
Should I go trick-or-treating? I don't even get trick-or-treaters in my neighborhood or in my apartment complex anyway, so I would have to go to I don't even know where the hot trick-or-treating spots are these days.
You're a few years removed from the people sharing that information with you.
Yeah, it's been a while. I don't know if I would fit in, and I don't have a costume, so that would just make it even weirder. So probably not going to be doing a lot of trick-or-treating this year.
We did this is going to sound crazy when I say it out loud. We did a vegan-friendly, allergen-friendly trunk-or-treat. Are you familiar with the trunk-or-treat phenomenon?
I am. It makes me kind of sad.
Oh, well. Wait for the rest of the story. So this was one of my Facebook groups, animal advocates of Central Pennsylvania. Good folks that do really good work in the interest of sort of animal rights and helping people transition into veganism. They pick people who have been vegans for a long time and help people who want to be vegan and make different food choices or better food choices and assign them coaches on what to eat and where to shop and things like that. It's cool. It's a nice little group. But they do some community outreach stuff. And one of the things they were doing this year is a vegan trunk or treat. For those who don't know, a bunch of folks put all their cars in a circle and you decorate your trunk with Halloween-y things. And kids come and walk around the circle of cars and you give them treats in costume. Right. It is allegedly fun. So they did it this year for kids who don't eat meat or eggs or things like that, or also have sort of specific kind of allergen needs. So gluten-free or no peanuts and things that. So which is a big deal, I guess, if you're a kid and you're allergic to peanuts. If you're it
got real bad.
Yeah. And it was fun. We had a good turnout. It was a ton of kids who were into it. It felt like we were doing kind of a good public service, although, being vegan on Halloween is obviously very limiting. There's not a ton of stuff you can sort of run down to the CVS that's going to be vegan friendly. So
is a lot of Halloween candy not vegan? I guess it's got like dairy in it or something. What would be in
Yeah,
there?
I mean, anything chocolate for the most part is out.
Chocolate.
Yeah. So we're doing.
I'm
a
not
lot
sure
of,
what the sort of like what's actually in Halloween candy grade chocolate. Like, there's got to be a way to do something very similar to whatever's going in there that is vegan, and probably very few people would notice.
Right. Yeah. Or is it cost prohibitive to do like 100 pieces of candy that are
that's
like
that's
boutique
probably,
vegan chocolates? Yeah.
Probably more realistic. They're just like, no, just keep putting the sawdust in there. It doesn't cost us anything.
Right. Sawdust is vegan.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Keep putting the, I don't know, the cheese powder. I don't know. I don't know which candy bar that is.
But it's a lot of stuff. It's a lot of like sweets, non-candy sweets, confections. So we had Sour Patch Kids. We had Swedish Fish. We had Starburst.
Okay, both very, so three for three. That's good.
Yeah. Skittles are vegan, but it like every car had more or less the same like, 5 snacks.
This is what they had at the vegan candy store.
This was the only option we could find. There were some people who did some serious work and like ordered cool stuff from Amazon or from other like small vendors on the internet. So somebody had like vegan peanut butter cups, which
excellent
is a joy. I hit that line myself, and stuff like that. But so. I sort of prefaced it like it was kind of a sad thing. It's a little bit of a bummer, obviously, if you're a kid and you don't get to participate in fun Halloween things with the rest of your friends. But it was cool that we did this event, that this Animal Advocates put this thing on.
But this is like not even on Halloween, though, so they could still go do regular trick-or-treating, right?
Sure, presumably. This was like 2 weeks before Halloween.
Yeah, so, this is just like a bonus Halloween. Why would they complain about that? It's like, hey, kids, want some more candy?
Yeah. But a bunch of the adults had some fun with it. A lot of people really went super hardcore in decorating their trunk. So there was somebody who did like a whole Wizard of Oz theme. There was somebody who did a Star Wars thing. And the 2 parents that were there were Luke and Leia, which was cool. There was somebody who dressed up, one of the parents dressed up as one of the Among Us astronauts.
Oh, excellent.
And made the trunk of their car look like a spaceship.
It's the only one of those references that any of the kids understood.
Sarah and I just did like sort of generic spooky stuff. We had like styrofoam tombstones and spider web hanging from everything. And so it was just kind of, generic creepy.
Well, I like it. Classic.
Yeah. She was like a zombie lady. I had like the most easy costume in the world is my Snorlax Pokemon onesie.
I don't know if that fits in with like the tombstones, but
I
respect
did not.
it.
No, it was a little bit of an oddity. We probably could have coordinated it a little bit better, but I was told I was doing this a few days before it happened. Did not have a ton of time to prepare. So went up into the tote full of Halloween odds and ends that we have in the garage, and the easiest costume that I could zip myself into right away was my Snorlax onesie that I bought at Spencer's on clearance like 5 years ago, and man, has just been the gift that has kept on giving for every Halloween since then. So the fun thing is, and I swear there is a fun thing, there were a ton of kids who came to this dressed as Pokemon.
Oh, yeah. Well, that follows.
That tracks, right? And they were all like, oh my God, there's an adult dressed like a Pokemon. So,
oh, man. Unexpected beeline for your trunk.
Yes. So there were, I am presumably on a lot of parents' Instagrams and TikToks and things because I had to pose for a lot of pictures with other kids dressed as Pokemon.
Oh, that's incredible.
There was a little, like probably 8 years old, dressed as a Bulbasaur. And he was like, we should fight. So there's a picture that his parents took somewhere out there in the universe of him and I like fist raised, squaring off like we're going to actually punch each other, which is not a thing that happens in Pokemon to the best of my knowledge. But he was game for it. It was his idea, in fact.
That's incredible.
Yeah. I'm about 4 feet taller than he is, which is funny too. So it was good. It was a good time. I had a lot of fun with it. I was hoping nobody was going to quiz me on like Pokemon facts because
I was going to say, yeah, you're putting yourself in dangerous territory here.
Yeah. But no, everybody was a good sport about it. I would default to any 8-year-old on Pokemon wisdom anyways. But yeah, it was a good time. There were kids who like came into the ring of cars and like would point directly at me. And I was like, oh, there's another Pokemon. He's coming right this way. Yeah, it was a good time. We had a lot of fun.
That's terrific.
Yeah.
I continue to be impressed that you own a Snorlax onesie.
Yeah. I didn't know all the Pokemon that came, so I didn't want to be the one who was like, "And who are you, little Jay?"
Oh, there are so many at this point. Who can keep track?
Yeah, I knew Bulbasaur, I knew Gengar, Pikachu's easy.
Gengar, yeah.
But yeah, there were probably one or two that I was like, I don't know what type that one is. Hopefully, there's not a test.
You're getting into the types, man. That's the next level. I was gonna say you gotta
names. Yeah,
you gotta know at least like some amount of like the original like 150, 151 or whatever. But I feel like everybody knows, their Pikachus and Charmanders and all that stuff.
Is Snorlax OG Pokemon? Was he around at the beginning?
Isn't he? I think so.
I would assume so.
Don't ask me that.
Yeah.
No, I'm pretty sure Snorlax was in there, right?
I always felt like it was sort of like an easy costume because at the very worst, I could pretend to be asleep and it would be within sort of the, I'd be on brand for that character. So
Right. Plus, he's huge, so it didn't matter that you're 4 feet taller than everybody else.
Right.
You're like
I figured that
actual
was kind of
Snorlax size.
Right.
I think. Don't email me.
Yeah, don't add us. No, I think Snorlax is one of the giant ones because he's the one that's always asleep with like other Pokemon like curled up on
Yeah,
top
no,
of him.
he's always in the way.
Yeah.
I think we should stop talking about Pokemon.
Our Discord will fact check us on this, but it was fun. It was sort of tangentially kind of gaming related, and I thought it was a story worth sharing.
Yeah, that's cool. That is fun. Man, I feel like gummies were really underrepresented when I was trick-or-treating. It was always about, like the little fun-size chocolate bars. But I wouldn't have minded some, like, Swedish Fish or especially Sour Patch Kids.
Yeah. Sour Patch Kids were a good purchase. I personally like those. Those were like a go-to candy for me. So I was, we had a ton of them too. So I was snacking while we were handing them out. The red ones, you can't go wrong with a red Sour Patch Kid.
Really good. Really good, man. I kind of want some.
But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I would do it again. Sarah and I really were like, we really have to like lock down our car decorating game for next year, though, because like the Wizard of Oz.
Well, you got to do a whole Pokemon diorama now.
Yeah. I suspect we would probably just embrace the spooky because we have more artifacts in our collection that could sort of like lean into that than Pokemon, honestly. But.
No, well, you got to start, get Sarah ready, figure out what Pokemon she wants to be next year.
There was a kid in an inflatable Godzilla costume.
Yeah.
And I was like, do kids know what Godzilla is? Is that still a thing that kids are into?
There's been some recent Godzilla movies.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, I wasn't going to, quiz them or anything like that. But
yeah.
Like,
fake Godzilla fan. Look at this guy.
But it was like the inflatable one that has the fan in it that sort of blows him up and makes him look huge. And he was stomping around. And I was like, that's a cool kid. I want to be that kid.
Well, I mean, that just sounds like an awesome costume. Who wouldn't want that?
Yeah. I suspect maybe, unless he's cooler than I thought, but maybe he just thought it was a cool like dragon or something like that.
Oh, yeah. It's like, I want the inflatable dragon costume.
Right. Yeah. And didn't expect some other adult to call him out,
Right.
Oh, really? What are your 3 favorite Godzilla movies?
Yes. Who are your 3 favorite heads on King Ghidorah or whatever?
Right, exactly. So that has been my Halloween adventure thus far. I'm not sure what else the rest of the week will bring, but Snorlax is there waiting for me if I need him.
Excellent.
Shortly after Halloween, we roll into Extra Life. Which we should hype here at the top of the show before we get much further. Saturday, November 4th is Extra Life Game Day. DJ and I will be playing video games for somewhere in the vicinity of 24 to 25 hours. So we would like your support. We would love you to cheer us on. We would love you to help support the charity if you're game for that. You can donate to Extra Life at VGHangover. Nope. Where can you donate to Extra Life? Am I getting it wrong?
Wait a minute. I was like, that sounds off. But no, it's VGHangover.com/Extra Life. You're close.
There you go. That's what it was. And yeah, all of the money goes to Children's Miracle Network hospitals in our area. I'm playing for the Hershey Children's Medical Center here in Hershey, Pennsylvania. DJ's playing for one out in his way. Do you remember the name of it off the top of your head?
It's the Cottage Medical Foundation, actually in Santa Barbara, which is where I went to school. So,
nice.
Not exactly my neighborhood, but I am. There's some connection there.
Cool. This will be our 10th year participating, which is super fun. Collectively, Team Video Game Hangover over the years has raised over $14,000 for this amazing charity. We would love your help getting that up, perhaps over 15 this year. That'd be a hell of a goal, right?
Pretty good. Yeah, we've already got some donations started trickling in, so that's exciting. But expect a lot of that will be around next weekend. So
yep,
see how it goes.
So we're playing games. We'll be streaming all day. You can go to that aforementioned link at VGHangover.com to get links to us on Twitch, to get links to donate. If you want to play video games with us, we'll have schedules up on Discord, on VGHangover.com, so that you can tune in at specific times. You can also play along with us. So yeah, we've got a lot of fun stuff planned for that weekend, for that Saturday specifically, and we'll be quite loud about it between now and then.
Yeah. Man, our plans are coming together rapidly. Like last week, I wasn't really sure what I was going to play, but in the following week, really started to nail stuff down. So
nice.
I just wanted to mention, because I'm proud of how well the list has come together. So for I'm going to be playing in the afternoon this game Silent Hope, which is an action RPG roguelike. Looks like a lot of fun. It reminds me a lot of Dragalia Lost, which is kind of a fun connection. So I'm just curious to see how that is. In the morning, I will be playing, for my retro game this year, Metal Gear Ghost Babel, which is the Metal Gear Game Boy game.
Oh, I get it. GB. That's clever.
Oh, you know, I never even realized that.
Oh, really?
That makes a lot of sense. Man, they really love just, everything on DS was like, had a subtitle.
Dual Strike.
It was DS, which was, I imagine, infuriating for a lot of like the marketing teams or whatever. But yes, that's very clever. Metal Gear Ghost Babel. Never played this one. Supposedly is pretty good. So that'll be interesting.
Nice.
And then later in the evening, playing some one of the more recent Chula's Art horror games called Parasocial, which, as it turns out, is about a streamer. So might get a little meta during that section.
Nice. I am less organized than DJ is. I have not quite pulled my list together yet, but I do have a couple of stalwarts that I go back to. There will inevitably be an island tour on Animal Crossing. All the more bittersweet this year that I haven't actually played Animal Crossing since, I think, New Year's Eve.
What? Unbelievable.
So I'm curious kind of what kind of state my island is in. I believe it is still decorated for Christmas. So it's almost perfect. Right, we're getting right to the time where I would need that to happen again. So
yeah, you just saved yourself a lot of effort that way.
Yeah. But I suspect there will be a lot of villagers who are quite upset that I've not been around.
Well, it's going to be suspenseful then.
I usually play the Slay the Spire daily challenge for this every year. I think I have for the last 3 or 4, which is always super fun and super weird usually. What else? Generally some Splatoon. I like to jump back into Splatoon. It's one of the few multiplayer games that kind of does it for me, and I feel like I can kind of stand my ground against an onslaught of 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
But the rest of the day is still kind of coming together. Definitely Super Mario Wonder.
There's a new Mario game out.
Yeah. Been itching to play some of that this week and have not had a ton of time with it. So that will definitely come back for Extra Life.
Cool.
But more to come. We will solidify our schedules, have all of that stuff posted on the internet for your planning purposes, and we hope you'll join us. Yeah.
Even if you can't donate, it's super fun to just have people swing by the stream, say hello, see what we're up to. It's a lot of fun and sort of keeps us going as we get later into the marathon. So hope if you're free anytime on Saturday, because it's all Saturday, we will see you in the chat.
Yeah. To be clear, Saturday, November 4th, not this coming Saturday, but
yes,
the next one. Yep.
Don't show up this Saturday, October, whenever, where it'll be very empty.
Yes. We're like, this is less than they said it would be.
Yeah.
So spooky games. We DJ pointed out before we started recording tonight that we play spooky games all year.
Well, that's something I noticed because I was looking through, like, everybody is doing a spooky game sale. And I was looking at Nintendo's, which I think is weird because I don't think of Nintendo as a destination for like spooky games.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, it like their page was full of stuff like Cult of the Lamb and Inscription and Death or Taxes. And I was like, wait a minute, we just play like stuff that goes on Nintendo's horror page all year long. So I don't know why I make a big fuss about waiting for a spooky month to do Spooky Saturday.
I certainly didn't get any of those games on sale, so that probably would have been a good motivator to save it for October. But no, I wanted to play all of those games. Dredge was on there. I wanted to play all that stuff when it first came out. So yeah, I'm not going to wait and save it all up for October. There's just not enough time in 1 month to be able to do it all justice. So
yeah, no, as I've been discovering.
So we're not. What's the word? We are not. It's not unusual that we cover spooky games here on Video Game Hangover, but yeah, we try to steer into it a little bit for Halloween.
Yeah. We make a little concerted effort to be spookier.
So I was going through the stacks of video games that I have next to my entertainment center, my TV console, trying to figure out what's spooky, and I have not played it yet. And I was reminded that I had a copy of the Callisto Protocol sitting there waiting to be played.
Wait a minute. Oh, okay. I remember. I was like, this is supposed to be good, right? And then I was like, no, wait a minute. Which one of these is good? Which one of these is bad? Because there was like the Dead Space remake that came out, and then there was this thing.
Yes.
Which was by former Dead Space team members, right?
Yes. I believe he was the Glenn Schofield was the director of the original Dead Space. Yeah, and I think there's some of the staff from that original team at, I forget what studio originally developed the first Dead Space, but yes, went on to a new studio to create this Callisto Protocol thing.
I heard through the grapevine that it was a lot of people who worked on Dead Space 3, which I know is your favorite in the trilogy.
Yeah. I maybe would need to play Dead Space 3 again, because I have a suspicion maybe it's changed over time, because I was really angry about it when it first came out. But
it deserves a second look.
As I look back upon it now, I'm like, maybe it wasn't as terrible as I thought. It did some really interesting things from a co-op perspective, and I maybe just didn't have the ability to appreciate it because I was so angry that it was a co-op game. But yeah,
I play games like that.
Yeah. Neither here nor there. The Callisto Protocol had sort of the unfortunate positioning of coming out like a month, I think, before the Dead Space remake. And the Callisto Protocol was kind of received with a resounding meh. People were kind of underwhelmed. And then Dead Space came out a few weeks later and was like adored by everyone.
Yeah, everybody was like, oh no, this one's good. We should play this one instead.
Right? Yeah. And never mind that it's sort of a remake of a 10-year-old game.
Yeah, it was kind of funny because it was just like, well, everybody's played it already.
Yeah. And the Callisto Protocol was sort of this kind of unique proposition. It was somebody who had made the original Dead Space, I don't believe had made a lot of horror games since then, or any horror games since then. So it was back to horror, was going to try to do, EA was not interested in making more Dead Space games. So this studio was going to kind of take it upon themselves to kind of create something in its shadow, in its vein. And, yeah, I mean, it is that. It is absolutely that. So the hook here is that you're a pilot, potentially not a good guy, potentially a smuggler, shipping some kind of illicit things around the galaxy, and you crash on a planet and find yourself in jail through a series of circumstances. And it is kind of the worst of the worst. It is where people get banished in the universe when they are so horrible that they don't want you on their planet anymore.
So this is like the jail is the setting for the game.
Correct. Yeah. And then within a quick time, you find that everything in the jail has gone sideways. There is some horrible virus that is mutating and turning your fellow inmates and guards and stuff like that into vicious, bloodthirsty monsters. And you escape, and you only have kind of improvised weapons that you pick up along the way to upgrade and assemble and basically hack and slash and beat your way out of the prison. It is very Dead Space. There are long sequences of you stalking down a hallway with a glove that allows you to sort of manipulate and move things through the air, and a giant sword that you've assembled from bits and pieces of other things. And yeah, you combine those things to like hack and slash the limbs off of monsters as they sneak towards you in the dark.
So you have a sword and not a gun?
It's not a sword. It's like a stun baton that you upgrade and modify.
Okay, but it's not a gun.
No, you get gunnish things later.
Okay, I just think that's interesting. It's like, I suppose it probably works better for the horror element of it, but Dead Space is so associated with that plasma cutter to me.
The plasma cutter, yeah. Well, you were an engineer in the first game, and
right,
and so you had like engineering tools, you had mining tools essentially that you were using to sort of fight back against the enemy's horde there. Here you have kind of prison escape weapons. Your first weapon is a shiv.
Of course, yeah.
It is a wrench that has been sharpened on one end into something very stabby. And yeah, your sneak kill basically is you sneaking up behind one of these monsters in the dark and then piercing the top of his skull with it. It's it is quite squishy. Yeah, you get Isaac had this in Dead Space 2. Your sort of finishing move is to stomp the monster when it's on the ground, and that is also quite squishy. Sarah said after sort of watching me play the first hour or hour and a half of this game is disgusting.
Not like all those other horror games you play.
No. She also said the same thing about Resident Evil Biohazard, by the way.
Oh, well, you said that game was disgusting. So
it was. I agreed that game was filthy. Yeah, it was just gross in a way that a lot of video games really have not embraced in the past. This is just kind of gushy and wet. Like everything just sort of like drips and like has a sloshy, sucking, wet kind of noise to it as you like dismember and beat the snot out of these monsters. Yeah, it's kind of satisfying. Like they'll come like throw fists at you and stuff like that, and you have like a dodge move where you can sort of like dodge out of the way and then do a counter. And the counters are very exciting, and there's like a takedown. You can do combinations of things. You eventually do get kind of a gun type weapon, and it'll allow you to sort of do a couple of body shots with your left hand. With the stun baton, and as they kind of go into like a fallback kind of motion, like a little reticle will pop up, and you can quickly like pull out your little sidearm and then shoot them once in the face. And that doesn't kill them though; it just kind of staggers them, and you have to go in and kind of finish them off. But ammo is very limited.
A few times, something.
Yeah, exactly, and then get them on the ground and stomp the hell out of them before their friends come. So yeah, it feels a lot like all of the stuff that happened in Dead Space. It certainly pushes all the same buttons. There are long processions of this where you're like I said, kind of walking down a hallway, and I'm like, this feels like it was just lifted directly out of Dead Space. There's a tentacle thing that comes for you, just like Dead Space. Yep. So yeah, if you had not told me this was made by people who had made Dead Space, I would say the people who made Dead Space should sue these people. Because it is we changed the setting, we changed the main character, but it is really just a stubbled-haired kind of bland every guy. In the Callisto Protocol they got a little star power because it's Josh Duhamel. Who is an actor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who does the motion capture and the voice of it. Sarah actually said, "Oh, it looks like Josh Duhamel," and I said, "It is." So you could tell it's him. Whether or not you consider that to be a good thing.
Is that a good thing?
I don't know. I couldn't tell you a single thing that I've known that he's in. I just know he's an actor.
Okay. So we're on the same page here. I'm just like,
he is or was married to Fergie.
Okay. Is she in
from the Black Eyed Peas? To the best of my knowledge, she's not.
Oh.
Yep.
Disappointing.
Missed a real opportunity there.
When was the last time the Black Eyed Peas were in a video game?
I don't. Just Dance, probably somewhere in Just Dance.
Yeah.
Yep. But yeah. I mean, is it scary? I guess is the sort of the spooky season question, right? Is it's more gross than it is scary. There are moments I remember of Dead Space of like being somewhere, being in a medical lab with blood dripping down the walls and spooky shadows happening and it being very dark and my light is flickering and really just sort of having a ton of dread. And in the Callisto Protocol, it's really just me kind of doing exactly that same thing. So like the novelty of that has worn off a little bit, and it feels less sort of creative in its approach to being scary. Plus, I really feel, even early in the game, I feel very well kitted out. Isaac really never quite felt like he had enough resources to be able to survive, and I remember dying a lot in Dead Space.
Wasn't that the issue with Dead Space 3, though? You just had like tons of ammo and weapons.
Yes, yeah, you're really like have an arsenal in that game. And it is kind of also the problem early on, surprisingly, in Callisto Protocol. As soon as you start to sort of get a couple of the basic weapons, you start collecting some credits. They call them Callisto credits for you to update your upgrade your weapons at the 3D printers that you find conveniently positioned all across this this prison.
Yeah, just available for inmate use.
Sure, just for you to put a weapon in and then print attachments to it, which, never occurred to anybody as being a bad idea. So yeah, once you could have upgrade a couple of those a few times and you get a couple little things available to you, it does not really feel terribly overwhelming. I think I've died maybe three times possibly in 5 hours of gameplay, which is not how I remember Dead Space going at all. So I could crank up the intensity if I wanted to. I could definitely play this on, I think they call it like bloodthirsty mode or something like that, where you die once and you die forever. You have to start the game back from scratch.
Don't do that.
They have ones where there's no ammo to be found anywhere. Save stations and medical stations are very infrequent. I think the description says almost non-existent is what it said. And I'm like, that doesn't really sound like fun either. But to the other extreme,
are you playing it on like normal mode?
I am playing it on normal mode, yeah.
Okay.
And to the other extreme, though, it sort of does feel like these things are maybe a little too frequent, a little too kind of easy to kind of spam. I just need something kind of in between that does feel like I don't want to die because the punishment for death is, something unthinkable or something horrible. But I really just feel like I'm a little unstoppable in the Callisto Protocol early. And I think that's sort of the cardinal sin of a video game is, or a spooky video game is to just make you so powerful that you're no longer afraid of the things that you're supposed to be afraid of.
Yeah. I always feel like with a horror game, especially, you want to play it like one difficulty setting higher than you normally would. Which is like a terrifying proposition to me for a lot of horror games. But yeah, if you don't do that, then they just don't, like, you run the risk of them just not being scary at all. And if that's what you want, then it kind of defeats the whole purpose.
Right. Like if I wanted to play this like the Terminator and just kill aliens and stomp around, and like that would be fun, I suppose. But I'm trying to like get a bit of a Dead Space rush off of this, and it doesn't feel like that, unfortunately. I think it does feel like an experience that sort of pales in comparison to the thing that it's trying to ape, which is a bit of a bummer. Like it is in every other way, though. It's a perfectly serviceable and actually sometimes quite impressive game. Like the graphics are really impressive, like super detailed. It looks awesome on my giant TV playing on my PS5 with performance mode turned on. The music is really good and kind of creepy. Like everything has this kind of like moaning, screeching kind of like environmental effect to it. It does a lot with like, wet physics. Everything looks sort of like shiny and
right.
Like recently rained or bled on. And all of that stuff kind of works. It just, I think they've put too much power in the character early, and it doesn't ever really feel overwhelming or unmanageable. And I think I kind of need a horror game to be a little bit of both of those things to be effective, to be effectively scary.
That's funny, because that was always my experience with Dead Space 1. Like, I didn't find it especially scary. One reason for that being just because I'm so cool, I'm not scared by anything. But two, like, you just had a lot of ammo, I felt like, in that game. And it felt much more like Resident Evil 4 to me. which,
interesting.
I thought was nice because I like Resident Evil 4.
Hmm.
And it was more of an action game. But yeah, like even atmospherically, kind of, it didn't. I mean, it's probably just because of all the ammo at that point. But I never felt especially threatened, except for that one point that I always talk about, where there's that invincible monster chasing you.
Yes,
because that's like you really can't do anything about it, so that you just have to run away.
Just run, yeah.
Yeah, but that's why I'm saying, like, if I wanted this to be scary, I would bump it up one level. But I didn't really need it to be scary. So I didn't do that, and then I just ended up like machine gunning everything.
Yeah, that's very much not how I played Dead Space. I don't know what like difficulty level I played the first Dead Space on, and this makes me want to play the remake, which I've heard is good, which is no surprise because it's a remake of a good game.
Mm-hmm,
You'd have to try really hard, I think, to screw it up. But yeah, this just sort of makes me wish it was Dead Space. Yeah, I think something about that Dead Space experience was tuned to wherever I was at, sort of playing video games at the time, or however sort of impressionable I was at the time, or just whatever difficulty I played it on. I definitely have a memory of it being much creepier and much scarier and much more sort of like moving through it much slower and more cautiously, and being very afraid of sort of what's around the corner or what does that shadow mean. And I don't ever really feel like that in Callisto Protocol, and it feels a little silly.
Well, I mean, there was way more ammo in it or way less ammo than a lot of other video games coming out at the time. But compared to other horror games coming out at the time, there was way more ammo in it. So, I don't know. Yeah. It landed at sort of a weird place on the spectrum.
And there, of course, are options in both games to make them much more difficult and makes them feel more like a survival horror experience. I just maybe need to embrace the reality of that if that's how I want to play it. That permadeath thing doesn't sound like fun, but maybe I do need to limit the amount of ammo and the amount of health stations just to make it feel like I'm squeezing some kind of devastating fun out of this.
Yeah. No, I don't think I would ever play something with permadeath mode unless it was, roguelike or it's sort of baked in. Yeah. But, not something that's more than like an hour or two long. So were people down on this because it like wasn't scary, or what was the common complaint?
I think that the stuff that I remember coming out of the initial reviews for it was that the movesets that your character Lucas has in the game in Callisto Protocol were very limited. Like he only had a couple of takedowns. If the like the other sort of like big like finishing moves and deaths that you could do had to be kind of unlocked or were hidden behind DLC and stuff like that. So there was some like nickel and dimey nonsense that kind of happened, I think, early in Callisto Protocol, where if you sort of got it on the first day and didn't pay for some, DLC pack or pass, you had a very sort of limited version of the game.
That's weird. I think that
rubbed people the wrong way. Yeah. I don't know how much of that kind of got addressed over time. I think that, the deaths and the takedowns are fine. Like, I don't really like, I wish there was some other creative way he could do a decapitation.
That seems like such a weird thing to complain about.
Yeah. I mean, people like to complain, right? I mean, that's
sure. But was Dead Space particularly known for just the hundreds of ways he could decapitate people?
It's not the association I have with that game. No.
Yeah, like I just remember him stomping on stuff. I don't even think he killed anything else a different way. That was just like his signature move. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. I that was the kind of the one thing that I remember is that the DLC proposition for Callisto Protocol when it first came out was particularly, anti-gamer, I guess. I've not seen anything else, and obviously I'm playing a heavily patched version of this game a year later. I've not really seen anything else in the game that makes it feel like, if I had bought this day one and kind of knew what I was getting myself into, I don't know that I would necessarily be disappointed by this. Well, at least it sounds like you're receiving it better than everybody did a year ago.
Yeah. I mean, it's easy to sort of complain about some of these things. Again, people like to complain. I also like to complain. I'm not exempt to that, but this it does scratch an itch. It is sort of satisfying in some way to sort of play a game like this. It just doesn't feel like it kind of has the balance right in a way that I remember Dead Space addressing it. And yeah, it is sort of this kind of pale imitator in a lot of ways, and that in itself is a bit disappointing. if you have the Dead Space team on board and you want to make something that sort of feels like that, that's cool. But I mean, put a spin on it, make it feel interesting. There's a lot of sort of Callisto Protocol things that feel like one-to-ones with Dead Space. And like, the Dead Space remake already exists, guys. Like, you don't have to like go note for note. I think there definitely could have been a bolder attempt at something creative that also pushed the same Dead Space buttons with Callisto Protocol.
Yeah.
I don't know what that thing is, but I don't make video games.
I wonder if there was like something more to the original plan for this, because didn't it start out? Wasn't it like a like PlayerUnknown Battlegrounds spinoff at one point? Am I thinking of a different game?
Oh, geez, I don't know. I'm not sure.
I thought there was some connection, like it was going to be in the same universe or whatever. Like I don't know how you connect that game to a space jail, but that was my understanding. Am I thinking of the right game? I thought that was the case, but it
probably. I mean, when I logged into Callisto Protocol for the first time, it asked if I had a Crafton ID, Krafton, which is, I think, is the same publisher, perhaps, as PlayerUnknown's Battleground. And it did say that if I had some like a cloud save for Battlegrounds, I could also get something unlocked in Callisto Protocol.
A loot drop or something.
A turkey dinner or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Chicken dinner, is that what it is?
Yeah.
But I don't, I've never played PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, so it didn't work for me, unfortunately. But it did mention it as I was logging in that like, if you've done this, you can have this in the game. So they do connect in some way that is lost on me, obviously.
Okay, I was just wondering, like, I haven't really followed the development of this, but I was just wondering, like, was it something else before it pivoted hard to being sort of like Dead Space at home, like once they lost the connection to PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds?
Oh, interesting.
Like, how much it transformed after that point?
I think the most recent news about Callisto Protocol, like in the last month and a half or so, is that in general, the publisher was not thrilled with the sales, and I think Glenn Schofield lost his job.
Ooh.
So it's
I thought he was like the head of the studio. The shareholder just kick him out or something.
I guess I don't know the full machinery of it. But I don't think if there is a Callisto Protocol 2, I'm not sure if he's going to be involved.
Yeah, well, it doesn't really sound like there should be.
I don't know. I mean, you could probably do stuff with it.
You could do something with it, but I mean, maybe Glenn Schofield wants to go off and make the game he really wanted to make instead of sort of like Dead Space imitation.
Yeah, I'm not. I don't know who to blame for this. You know what I mean? It's a bit of a bummer that it's not more exciting. When it was first teased, we were in a world where there was not Dead Space remakes, where it seemed very much like EA was not interested in making Dead Space games anymore, or even sort of re-releasing the old ones. They were kind of locked on old consoles, or you had to play them on Steam and stuff like that. So the proposition of having a PS5 era Dead Space-like video game from the people who had made a Dead Space game seemed very exciting. It just, unfortunately, a couple hours in thus far, it doesn't seem to have sort of delivered on that. It really just feels like it's kind of aping the original product.
Man, you say the fact that they're available on Steam like it's a bad thing. Like, why aren't you just playing Dead Space 1 and 2 on your Steam Deck all the time?
Yeah, I think, again, it was probably teased in a world where I didn't have a Steam Deck yet. And
that makes sense.
Yeah. I've never been like, oh, thank God it's on Steam. I don't like playing games on my computer. It's never fun to me to sort of sit at my desk.
Not on your Steam Deck, though.
But again, I didn't have one at the time. I do now, and that does sort of solve
I'm just talking about
Steam
now.
access.
Yeah. Just throw Callisto Protocol out the window. Just go get Dead Space 2 on your Steam Deck, and then, see you in a month.
And put some headphones in and turn the lights off.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's fine. It's fine. It's not terrible. I paid $20 for it. It's a great $20 game. I'm probably going to finish it. I had a fun time with it. I thought I was pretty good at the combat. I generally don't think I am in most video games. So it felt pretty badass to be able to kind of like get the dodge moves down and do some of the counters with the perfect timing and stuff. So yeah, it's a fun, gushy, bloody, messy, stompy, crushy kind of video game. And I need one of those every now and then.
I'm going to say, like, this is probably the wrong game to bring this up in, but like, could they set a horror game somewhere nice for a change? Like, does it have to be, like, as soon as you mentioned it was just in a jail, it's like, oh, well, that doesn't sound like somewhere I want to be.
Yeah.
It's like a gross space jail, but, you know. It's like when you were talking about Resident Evil 7. It's like, one of my main reasons I'm not really interested in that game is it just looks gross.
Yeah. I think that there has been like I don't know if it's a trend even, but I think there are a couple of things that exist in horror cinema that are like lights on, sun shining horror experiences. If you think about, I think sort of the gold standard for this kind of in modern times is Midsummer.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of.
Yeah, Ari Aster's game, which is a beautiful, like floral, I think it's Dutch kind of wonderland essentially in it. But there are horrible culty deaths and things happening in that game that really just make it kind of terrifying. But there isn't sort of an ounce of like, lights off darkness. There's no blood dripping down the walls. It's not sort of this like cookie cutter spaceship chains jingling, like everything stolen from Alien. Mm-hmm. Every sci-fi horror movie really just goes back to 1979 and copy and pastes all the stuff from the original Alien, I think, in a lot of ways, and has not evolved a ton beyond that. So it's, I guess it's a little disappointing that, to my knowledge, there has not been a lights on, sunshiny horror experience in gaming. If that exists, I would love to know about it, but I'm not aware of it.
Well, you're in luck, because this week I play this game called Mundaun. Which does in fact take place on I guess it's kind of a sunshiny mountain. It's hard to tell, actually, because it's all in black and white. But there's something I was noticing while playing the game. I was just like, wait a minute. It's just like broad daylight for a lot of this game, and I'm very uncomfortable.
Oh, cool. Tell me more.
So I play this game, which I'm pretty confident is pronounced Mundaun. It's named after a remote region in Switzerland where the game takes place. And it's a first-person adventure / horror game. The premise is you're this guy who receives a letter telling him that his grandfather has passed away, quite horrifically, actually. He was in his barn caught fire.
Ooh.
Yeah, so you get this letter, but it's like kind of suspicious after reading it, like the story about the barn and everything, and the way that the sender tells you, like, oh, no need to come check out the barn or anything. We'll take care of the burial and all that is doesn't quite hold water. So you find yourself traveling up to this remote area in the Alps to just figure out what's going on. And this came out a few years ago, but I was looking for recommendations on spooky games to play this year, and this was among one of the most frequently recommended games. People described it as being like, it's a very narrative heavy, sort of atmospheric, not a lot of sort of like horror, jump scare, like really tropey stuff like you were talking about, like the swinging chains and blood dripping down the walls and everything. Just a very unique atmosphere. And I thought, well, that sounds like something I'd be interested in. And so far it's very unique. Like I said, it's in black and white. And another thing that's very notable about it is that it is all it has this like hand-drawn pencil look to everything. And so I was watching some making of videos, and the process to actually get the game to look like this is incredible. Because I think it was all hand drawn by the lead creator, who would basically 3D model everything. And I don't know if you've seen sort of like texture maps for 3D models where they, eventually they get wrapped around or applied to the 3D model somehow. But at some point they exist in this form where everything is sort of flattened out and like distorted a little bit. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I think so.
Yeah, just like a flat sort of texture map. So basically what he would do is he would print out the 3D models sort of flattened out into this template, and then he would like just draw on them, like draw the textures by hand in pencil.
Oh, wow.
and then put those back into the computer to go into the game. So it's not just like, it doesn't just look hand drawn. It actually was hand drawn by this one guy and then like scanned back in onto these models, which is really incredible. And it has an incredible effect in the game too. Like, it's very distinctive. It makes everything look sort of like a PlayStation 1 game, just because the textures are very sort of like splotchy, and it's not like, I don't know what you think of when you hear like hand-drawn pencil. Like, I was imagining something a little more like ornate, I guess. But if you look at it, it's a lot of like scribbling and really heavy pencil work. So it's very, like, a lot of times it's very blotchy and looks kind of low resolution, like a PS1 game.
Oh, interesting.
But I think that's kind of perfect because, like, to me, the PS1, that sort of 32-bit era, is like the sweet spot for horror games, where they just, it's not quite photorealistic. Everything looks a little bit uncanny and weird, and your imagination is sort of having to fill in the gaps. I think it's really effective for horror stuff, especially.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. I'm looking at screenshots of this on Google Image Search, and it's and even sort of, you had just described it as black and white, but it's more like a sepia. It definitely kind of has this like,
yeah, it has like a little filter over it,
frosty, kind of almost foggy vibe to it, without it sort of becoming kind of the horror trope of the the fog-filled marsh or something like that. It's
yeah.
But I'm looking at some of the interiors of like the interior of a log cabin, and it's it looks like a pencil sketch in a lot of ways. That's really cool.
Yeah, so a really amazing sort of art direction. I think it's really effective. It gives the whole thing just this very surreal sort of vibe as you're going through the Alps, which is like also a very interesting setting. Like I said, a lot of it takes place during the day, and you're outdoors in the mountains in just these wide open environments. And yet there's enough happening there's like enough sort of threatening elements and just weird stuff to be suspicious and uneasy about, that it's hard to just walk around and without sort of turning around every 20 feet to look over your shoulder and that sort of stuff. Like, man, am I really, like, is it safe to be out here? The villagers are kind of weird. Like, you don't run into a lot of villagers to begin with, which is very sort of unsettling. And the few that you do run into are just like, what was up with that guy? But you set off, like, you arrive at the barn and you start sort of piecing together clues about what may have actually happened. You talk to the few villagers that I mentioned. Something seems not right. There's a goat that appears right away, and I'm just like, I'm not really caught up on my folk sort of like superstitions or anything, but I'm pretty sure a goat's not a good thing to have show up.
Did you ever see the movie The Witch?
No, I read I read like the movie spoiler summary of it.
Okay. That is probably cinema's creepiest goat.
The most famous goat in horror.
If you need a very scary, ominous goat in a piece of entertainment, I would encourage you to watch The Witch.
Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
It'll mess with your head. Yeah.
Well, anyway, so there's a goat in it. There's actually several goats. They're all kind of weird. but like I was sort of hinting at, it feels like it has a lot of sort of like folk horror influence. It seems to draw from a lot of like folk inspirations. Like at one point, you're going to bed in your grandfather's cabin, and there's like this weird like board on the wall with a bunch of nails sticking out of it. I'm like, what is this? Like, this looks completely out of place. And the explanation is, in the game, it's like, oh, my grandfather would like sleep with this on top of him, and it's like a folk device to like ward off evil spirits while he's sleeping.
Oh, wow. And
it's like, okay, well, that's just plausible enough that I guess it makes sense, but it's still just like this totally weird thing that you're like, well, I don't really know what the deal with this thing is, like, or what it's doing in this game.
Interesting. And it's like, I guess, do you know if it's based on sort of actual folklore tales, or if it's just sort of like weird stuff concocted for the conceit of the game?
I can't really tell. There's like this whole series that the creator did, sort of talking about the like inspiration behind a lot of the settings, and I assume the sort of like more supernatural material in it that I haven't looked at yet because I don't want to give anything away for myself. Like I'm still playing through it. But
it's probably almost better to not know, right? I mean, that's
yeah. I mean, like a lot of the stuff that has happened so far seems like, okay, this could be, a story that they told in the remote mountains of Switzerland or wherever. But it all feels very, like, not real, I guess, but like authentic is maybe a good way to describe it. Like, probably somebody told stories very similar to this, and they're probably like creatures like you encounter in the game that appear in like regional folklore, that kind of stuff.
Cool.
And it's just such a different and like unusual atmosphere than like every other horror game I've played, so I'm really enjoying that part or that aspect of it. There's a lot of sort of not really Resident Evil style puzzles, but just kind of adventure game style puzzles where you need a key for this thing, or you need to find some water before you can brew coffee for yourself, which I've had a little bit of trouble with just because the puzzle interfaces are not amazing, and sometimes the puzzles are a little, like, they feel a little more complicated, or just like I'm missing some component of them. But for the most part, it's not really been an issue. A lot of the stuff I've really struggled with has been for like optional objectives. Like the coffee thing, you're told very early on, it's like, you keep sort of a handwritten list of objectives you're supposed to complete, and one of them is just make coffee, and then in parentheses, optional. But I was like, I don't want to make coffee. I want to see what that's about. And you like slowly find all the components for it. Like you find a bag of coffee grounds, and you find a stove, and you keep finding these little like chunks of firewood. But it just becomes like this more and more complicated process. Like, so I found the stove. Oh, I found a pan. Oh, there's no water in it. Well, so where do I get the water? I haven't seen water the entire time I've been here. So I'll just like, let's table this for now.
Maybe I don't want coffee.
Yeah. And then like hours later, I finally found some water, and I like made the coffee. It was like, well, that took forever. But I don't know. It's just like, weird puzzles like that crop up all over the place. Fortunately, it hasn't been like progress blocking or anything, but sometimes I feel more like I'm struggling with like the puzzle interface or the inventory rather than actually, getting stumped by the puzzle itself.
Oh, interesting.
But other than that, I've really been enjoying it. There are some sort of like tense elements, like I mentioned. There are creatures that occasionally appear that you have to deal with. And for the most part, I broke my rule about horror games. I'm just playing it on easy mode, so I can get through it without being terrified too much. And it's made.
What do you mean, like deal with? Do you have to like fight or hide, or what is sort of Mundaun's approach to sort of enemy interaction?
It feels like you're encouraged to be stealthy and avoid them, because the ones I've encountered so far will just sort of stare at you, and as they stare at you, it feels like they are doing damage to you. It's like you don't really have a HUD or anything, so it's hard to tell what exactly the effects are. But the longer they stare at you, they're like these tendrils that sort of creep in from the side of the screen. I'm just like, well, I don't know what that is, but it's probably not good. So
can't be good. Yeah,
go hide behind this rock until it goes away. I should actually just mention what these things are. At least, the ones in the early part of the game are like these weird sort of like haystack men, which they're made out of hay, because there's a lot of hay around in this community, and they just have these really tall pointy heads, and they look hilarious.
Oh no.
So if it weren't for the fact that they like sort of creepily turn towards you and like stare at you, it would just be like a comedy game, because they're like these big pointy-headed haystack men chasing you around. But in this case, it's very funny, because the way you fight back at them is you just find a pitchfork in one of the nearby barns, and you just like poke them with it a couple times. It's like the haystack's worst enemy, I suppose.
Right.
Or you can also set them on fire. That's
I was gonna say, find some fire. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, so they are kind of creepy if you like come around a corner and there's one of them like standing off in the distance. It's like, once you get over just how silly they look. That's kind of terrifying. But that seems like something like you can imagine parents warning their kids about, like growing up in the remote mountains or something. Like, oh man, at night all the hay bales come to life and try and kill you.
Right. Yeah.
So I don't know if it's a real story.
Board with nails in it on your chest.
Make sure you put the scary board over yourself while you sleep.
Ugh. Yeah.
So yeah, I've been having a lot of fun with it. It's just scary enough for me to deal with, I think. So I really enjoy the fact that it manages to just be sort of tense and suspenseful in broad daylight. I like the just sort of folk horror aspects. Throughout the game, you have these like hallucinations, which like may or may not be real. I feel like they're probably not real, but you can never be too sure in one of these situations. But it's definitely been a very interesting sort of story so far, and I'm curious to see where it ends up.
Cool. Nice. Speaking of spooky horror game sales, I bought this at some point in the past, and it is sitting on my PlayStation.
Nice.
I should check it out while the spooky season is still among us.
Yeah. I can't tell how far through it I am. I'm like a few hours into it. I played maybe 2 or 3 hours this Sunday, but I'll try and finish it up soon. Because I want to figure out what's going on. I wonder if it just has a really horrific ending, like all of these. Like anybody who goes to a remote village probably not in for a good time,
right?
In this sort of story,
never ends well.
Yeah.
So what's it called again, and where are you playing it?
It's called Mundaun. That's spelled Mundaun. And I'm playing it on the Switch. It's out on actually a lot of stuff. It's on Xbox, PS5, and Steam. And I can't tell. I'd be curious to see how those other versions look, because I've seen a few trailers of sort of like similar scenes that I've encountered in the game, and everything like runs so smoothly, and it feels like maybe the textures are even higher resolution, or just because those machines are like more capable graphically than the Switch is. But once again, I feel like the fact that it slightly chugs a little bit and the textures look kind of rough on the Switch is actually doing it a lot of favors, because it just looks like an old sort of like chunky PS1 horror game.
Oh, interesting.
Which is great.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if this would be quite as effective playing at, like, 60 FPS and full HD or whatever. I think it would be a very different experience.
Well, if you connect it to your PlayerUnknown's Battleground ID, you get extra power-ups and weapons, too. Yeah.
Get some extra ammo for your pitchfork.
Right, yeah.
I think there's a gun in this. I mean, I know there's a gun somewhere, because I found bullets. And I read a book or something that like increased my gun handling skill. And I was like, well, where's the gun? I feel like I missed something important if I was supposed to pick one up already. But we'll see how it goes.
What's the thing that Chekhov's gun? If you show the gun in the first act, you gotta kill some. You gotta shoot somebody in the final act. Yeah.
Yeah. They didn't say anything about Chekhov's bullets. So it's like, no. Find bullets in chapter 2, then you missed the gun in chapter 1.
Right, exactly. You got to go back and make some more coffee.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to seeing where it ends up going, but so far it's very, very cool.
Cool. And it looks really neat. I can't think of another game that quite looks like this. So yeah, it's interesting. I got baited into a conversation about a daylight horror, and you found one on a video game.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny because like starting out, it's not quite as like bright and sort of like wide and open as some of the later areas are, but yeah, I just had the suspicion that there was going to be a Haystack man standing behind me, or whatever other enemies or threats are in the game later on. Because normally you would just feel very safe, like, okay, I can see so far into the distance. Clearly, there are no like zombies, there are no scary dogs or anything in the vicinity, but it still just doesn't feel safe walking around. Which I think is quite an achievement.
Yeah, definitely. Awesome.
Yeah, so that's very cool. Very good, actually spooky game for a spooky Sunday.
We should talk about Sunshine Manor briefly here too at the end. You and I both check this out. I think sort of the easiest way to do this is to say neither one of us loved it.
No, I don't like to bring games on here just to be like, well, this wasn't good, but
yeah,
I didn't really have a great time with it.
Yeah, this is it's a very indie game. I think it's a 2-person development team. So kudos to them for this thing that they made. It is I guess a prequel to a previously released creepy game. Yeah, it's kind of pixel art. It's you're a girl who is exploring a haunted house. Your friends have been absconded with, have been disappeared by some spooky specter in the haunted house, and you go around trying to buddy up and do errands for sort of the good ghosts that live in the house, and try to get your friends back. You have a bit of a defense ability that allows you to create kind of a protective circle around yourself if bad monsters come charging at you. And that seems to be kind of the hook of the game, at least early on, is that you have a very limited field of view as you're skulking around this creepy house. You have a flashlight, and so it sort of lights up a little space around you. But as you kind of move through and explore, and you do some kind of adventure game errands, like you have to, like DJ said, sort of find the key to the lock, or find, you find a ghost of a chef, and he wants you to find his spatula. Mm-hmm. So you've got to go, I think I know where the spatula is. It's somehow in the trunk of a car, and you have to go find a car in the garage and things like that. This is early in the game, keeping it relatively spoiler free here. So you're running errands, and then like ghosts will charge at you from the dark. And you have to quickly kind of push the protective field button to kind of protect yourself. A little later in, you get more errands and some other kind of more unique things that you have to do on behalf of some of these ghosts. But it's kind of a spooky exploration thing. It's pixel art and kind of cute and fun. It does tend to be a little chatty sometimes. There's a very long, unskippable cutscene at the beginning that sets up the scenarios of the game. I don't know. I really didn't feel like it sort of paid off on the stuff it was trying to do, unfortunately.
No, it's a cool premise. Like, it's like trick-or-treating gone wrong.
Yeah.
It's a cute aesthetic. But I just don't think it does anything especially well. Like, it's not very, it's kind of just like, kind of drag yourself from room to room doing these fetch quests that don't have any logic to them. The main ability, like the reflective thing, is not very fun to use. And then the thing that's most confusing to me is that it says on, like, in the description, it's like, it's a horror RPG. But, like, in no capacity is this an RPG. It is just a weird sort of like action game where you do fetch quests. So I don't like. This would have been a good game to cite during that dispute on the Discord a few weeks ago about what makes an RPG. I'm just like, okay, somebody please tell me how this qualifies as an RPG, because I'm not seeing it. Like, there are dialogue boxes, but I wouldn't say that qualifies you to be an RPG.
No, I'd agree with you on that. It's a spooky adventure game, I think, more than anything. And spooky kind of puts it lightly. I think there are a few kind of initial scares where like the ghost will charge at you from like the limited visual area that you have around you, and you have to quickly sort of put on the protective shield. And the first like 3 or 4 times it happened, I genuinely went, like, out loud as this thing sort of charged at me across the screen. But then, I kept getting errands I had to run and stuff to try to help the good ghosts. And I'm like, what is this game? What's happening? I'm a little surprised because the game does seem to be well liked on Steam. I had read some sort of enthusiastic reviews for it, and it just recently popped up on the Switch for like $6 or $7, and I'm like, let's give it a shot. This looks cool. But unfortunately, it was a bit of a bummer.
I was kind of let down, but that's why there's Mundaun.
Absolutely.
So I get back to.
I can go back to Stomping Skulls and Callisto Protocol.
Yeah.
But this is called Sunshine Manor. It is on the Switch. It's on Steam. I believe it's on itch as well. If any of that sounds like it might be appealing to you, give it a shot.
I would say do not give it a shot. I think you're being very generous.
I think you're right.
Anyway, Mundaun is good.
Yeah, well,
play Mundaun.
Yeah, I really probably should. I definitely. I've already made the investment. I own it. I should play it. We should have a running chart of how many times over the years you've been like, look at this game that I found and I played it. I'm like, oh, hey, I bought that years ago and didn't actually play it.
Oh yeah. Too many to count at this point.
More than once, certainly. Yeah. So yeah, we are going to wrap it up there, I guess, right? Any other spooky games on your list from last week, DJ?
From last week, I don't know. This week for Spooky Sunday, I will probably be playing. Man, I don't know. I was gonna say I was gonna play Dredge, but I have this whole list of weird indie horror games, which I think are sort of like 2 or 3 hours long. So I might end up playing some of those instead. But that will still definitely be happening. I think. Yeah, so we may not be talking about spooky games next week, but there's still one Spooky Sunday left in this month, so we'll be doing that.
Excellent. All right, well, let's wrap this thing up. If you need any more video game hangover in your brain, you should follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/VGHangover, and you can always get show notes and links and tell us what you thought about this episode at VGHangover.com. We would love for you to hang out with us and chat about video games and other fun stuff. You can go to VGHangover.com for a link to our Discord to do that. Please subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, and anywhere else you can get a podcast. And maybe help us out by telling your friends about the show, too.
Yeah, that really helps us out bring in new listeners. We really appreciate it. We want to give thanks again to Fear of Dark this week for our intro and outro music. If you'd like to hear more of his work, you can go to fearofdark.bandcamp.com. And check out the rest of his discography. Maybe buy the whole discography. That would be great.
Do it.
Is Bandcamp still around? That's still a thing, right?
It still seems to be a thing. Yep. Our weekly Bandcamp watch here at the end of the show.
Right.
Bandcamp is still a thing.
I love it. It's like, first, it's like, we still got all of our social media accounts? Good. Okay, what about Bandcamp? That's still around, right?
Yeah.
You just never know in the year 2023.
We are really going to have to change this outro if there's any further collapse in the social media time-space spectrum.
Yeah.
We'll be back next week. Until then, this is Randy Dickinson.
This is DJ Ross.
Thanks for listening to Video Game Hangover. Bye.
Good night.
See ya.